Here's where we are in the governance series. We completed phase 1, seeing the system, letters 1 to 12. We are in phase 2, designing the system, letters 13 to 30. We completed stage 1, entering design, letters 13A and 13B. We completed stage 2, stabilizing the core, letters 14 to 17. We are in stage 3, seeing clearly, letters 18 to 20. We just completed letter 20B, the 4 layers operating beneath the surface. We are in letter 20C, when the organization cannot agree on what is true. Stage 3 has been building one capability, the capacity to see clearly, to know what the organization is actually producing, to read the signals that tell it whether what was built is holding, and to surface what the reporting layer cannot or will not surface on its own. Another question remains for stage 3, not whether the signal is accurate, not whether it can be read, whether the organization can agree on what is true before the signal is even generated. When different departments define the same data differently and produce different answers to the same question, no signal design resolves the disagreement. The conflict is upstream of the signal. It is in who owns the data that produces it. When different teams build similar technology independently, and each rational local decision is accumulating into an integrated system no one designed and no one can fully see, no reporting improvement surfaces the incompatibilities. The gap is in who owns the integrated design. Data authority conflict and architectural fragmentation are two expressions of the same governing absence. The organization has not designed the authority to say what is true about its data and what is true about the systems that produce it. This letter resolves both. The first story comes from a scenario introduced in letter 11. At a large technical support center, 5 alerts appeared across 5 different dashboards. 5 trouble tickets generated for what turned out to be one device, represented 5 different ways across 5 different teams. The organization believed it had 5 alerts to address. It had one actual alert with 5 representations because no one had been given ownership of what that device was called, how it was categorized, or which team's definition governed when definitions conflicted. This is data authority conflict, when multiple teams define and represent the same data differently, resulting in conflicting interpretations and distorted decision-making. The conflict is not in the technology. It is in the absence of a designed authority for the data the technology reports. Defined data governing authority is the design response. Here's how it's built. Element 1. Name one authority for each critical data asset whose definition governs when definitions conflict. This is not the person who manages the database. It is the governance role responsible for the canonical definition of what that data represents and which version is authoritative when versions disagree. Before this is in place, different teams arrive at the same meeting with different numbers. The decision either stalls while the teams debate which number is correct, or it proceeds on which number was argued most confidently, with no design mechanism to ensure the right number governed. Element 2. Document the data governance mandate visibly so every function that uses the data knows whose definition is canonical and what the process is for resolving conflicts. A data governance decision known only to one team is a local assumption, not a governance design. When this element is functioning, the last 3 significant decisions involving cross-functional data were supported by a single authoritative figure, not competing interpretations arriving at the table simultaneously. Element 3. Build a conflict resolution pathway that routes data definition conflicts to the named authority before they reach the decision table. The proof signal for this element is direct. Take the most consequential data point your organization uses for strategic decisions and ask 3 teams to define it. If the definitions differ, defined data governing authority has not yet been built. If the definitions match and each team names the same authority, it is functioning. The second story comes from a scenario introduced in letter 8. Inside a large technology organization, multiple engineering teams were building similar products independently, each believing they were solving an important problem, each moving quickly. From the outside, it looked like innovation and progress. Over time, a different reality emerged. Duplicate solutions were created. Systems became incompatible. Integration became complex. Costs increased. No one intended to create fragmentation. It simply emerged because no one owned the integrated design. The signal phrases that mark this pattern are precise in what they reveal. Each team had their own approach. We're moving fast. We will align later. Let them innovate. Each sentence is accurate. Each is also a signal that what looks like innovation from the outside is accumulating as technical complexity from the inside. This is architectural fragmentation. When the technology ecosystem evolves without a coherent integrated structure, each deployment is a rational local decision. The accumulation produces an integrated system no one designed and no one can fully see. Integrated system design is the design response. Here is how it is built. Element 1. Name one authority for the integrated system structure. The person or function accountable for whether new technology deployments cohere with existing systems. This authority does not replace the teams building the technology. Their mandate is specifically for the integrated system, whether new decisions taken together produce a technology environment the organization can operate, maintain, and build on. Before this is in place, a technology deployment creates a dependency no one anticipated because no one was responsible for seeing the integrated picture before the deployment began. The discovery happens after the systems are live and incompatible. Element 2, define the integration review, a designed governance step that evaluates new technology decisions against the existing system structure before deployment begins. The review asks 3 questions before any deployment starts. Does this deployment introduce a dependency that existing systems were not designed to support? Does it duplicate a capability that already exists? Does it produce data in a format that downstream systems cannot consume? These questions are designed to be asked before deployment, not discovered after. 2 things confirm this element is functioning, and neither of them is whether the review found a problem. A review that finds no compatibility issues is still a valid review. A clean result is not evidence that no review occurred. It may simply mean the deployment was well designed. What confirms the integration review is functioning is this. First, documentation that the review was performed. A record of when it happened, who conducted it, and what was evaluated. Second, a named owner whose governance responsibility includes running this review before every deployment. If both exist, the integration review is functioning regardless of what is found. If either is absent, the review is informal at best and absent at worst. Element 3, build a visibility mechanism. A living map of what the organization has deployed, who owns each component, and where the integration dependencies exist. This is not a technical diagram. It is a governance document owned by the named authority, maintained at defined intervals, and made visible to the people whose decisions depend on knowing what already exists. The proof signal for this element is direct. Ask the person responsible for your most significant AI deployment what existing systems it depends on and what systems depend on it. If the answer requires a meeting to assemble, integrated system design has not yet been built. If the answer is documented, current, and accessible within the governance review, it is functioning. Data authority conflict and architectural fragmentation appear to be different patterns. One is about data, the other is about technology structure, but they share the same governing absence. In both cases, the organization has multiple teams making rational local decisions without a designed authority for the integrated outcome. The support center's 5 teams each define data correctly for their own purposes. The engineering teams each built technology correctly for their own purposes. The fragmentation was not produced by poor decisions. It was produced by the absence of a governance designed for the whole. And in both cases, the consequence arrives not as a visible failure, but as a quiet distortion. The support center did not know it had one device until someone asked. The technology organization did not know it had duplicate solutions until integration revealed incompatibilities that had been accumulating for months. This is the pattern governance layering named in letters 20A and 20B. Patterns layer. They persist beneath each procedure, every organization, every framework, because those things were designed to address the visible layer, not what operates beneath it. Data authority conflict and architectural fragmentation operate beneath the visible layer. The dashboards appear functional. The teams appear productive. The patterns are invisible until someone asks the question the governance structure was not designed to ask. Defined data governing authority and integrated system design are the governance designs that ask those questions before the consequence makes them unavoidable. What this means for your organization. 3 questions are worth bringing into a leadership conversation before stage 4 begins. 1. For the most consequential data your organization uses to make strategic decisions, can you name the person or function whose definition is authoritative when definitions conflict? And is that authority known to every team that uses the data to make decisions? 2. For the technology your organization has deployed in the last 2 years, is there a governance review that evaluates new deployments against the existing integrated structure before the deployment begins? And is there a visibility mechanism that shows what has been built, who owns each component, and where the dependencies exist? 3. When you look at the data your organization uses and the technology systems that produce it, does the organization agree on what is true? Not whether the data is accurate within each team's definition, but whether the definitions themselves are governed by a single authoritative source that every team works from. Organizations that find these questions easy to answer with specificity tend to have made these governance design decisions deliberately rather than by default. For those where the answers surface uncertainty, the 2 design responses above, defined data governing authority and integrated system design, are available to be built, not as a technology project, as a governance decision about who owns what and what that ownership requires. Letter 19C introduced an observation that stage 3 named, but stage 3 was not designed to resolve. Consequential displacement, the condition in which the consequence of a decision arrives at a different person in a different role at a different time than the decision that produced it. 3 sentences mark its presence. That was before my time. That was a different team's decision. We inherited this condition. Consequential displacement is not a structural pattern with a standalone resolution in stage 3. It is an observation, a condition that becomes visible at the signal level before the governance designed to address it has been built. Its informal resolution belongs to stage 5, where the mechanisms for keeping accountability connected to its consequence across time are built. What stage 3 contributed was the capacity to name it. Stage 5 builds the design that addresses it. Stage 3 addressed 7 structural patterns, each one a different dimension of the governing question. Does the organization agree on what is true? And is the system designed to surface what leadership actually needs to see? Here are the 7 structural patterns and their respective letters. Visibility gap resolves to signal integrity design, letter 18A. Metric distortion resolves to governing signal definition, letters 18B and 18C. Interpretive gap resolves to signal translation design, letter 19A. Capability gap resolves to domain sufficiency design, letter 19B. Oversight roles resolves to engaged oversight design, letter 19B. Data authority conflict resolves to define data governing authority, letter 20C. Architectural fragmentation resolves to integrated system design, letter 20C. Letters 20A and 20B name the closing observation of stage 3, governance layering. These 7 patterns do not operate independently. They layer, interweave, and amplify each other. The organization that addresses one without seeing the others has not designed a governance response. It has managed a symptom. The governance structure built in stage 2 now has the signal mechanisms designed to tell it whether what was built is holding. The right data is being captured. The right question is being answered. The signal traveling upward can be received and read by the people who need to act on it. The signal traveling downward arrives with the clarity it was intended to carry. And the organization now has the design authority to say what is true about its data and its technology. Stage 3 has left the reader with this question stage 4 is built to answer. If organizational activity is visible, accurately measured, accurately interpreted, is that activity actually producing what the strategy was designed to serve? That is the question stage 4 asks. Not whether the organization can see clearly, whether what it sees, when seen clearly, is producing coherent outcomes. Stage 4, from activity to coherence, does not introduce new patterns to identify. It addresses 7 structural patterns that have already been named in phase 1. Each one a different way that organizational activity quietly works against the strategy it was designed to serve. When coherence is achieved, teams feel their work landing. The strategy is not something written in a document somewhere. It is something they can see their daily activity producing. That is where the next letter begins. Thank you.